Thank you.
Okay, let's start this morning class. Everyone have a good weekend. Thank you to George to come to our class. This is a class of blockchain technology and token economy for a business student. They are undergraduate. So we would like to have new knowledge about this industry, Web3 industry, because we learn so much in the class, but mostly from the white paper, from the anything on the internet. Some guest speaker, guest teacher like you come before you to talk about a smart contract and other about DeFi, and now you are helping us to understand about GameFi. Very new to us and very interesting because it's a new way to have a kind of monetization way using game because this is a Gen Z, so many is very young, some or many of them is playing game as well. So I think they can spread this information to their peer about
Yeah.
this industry. So I think you will have around in total 2 hours. You can manage the time. Maybe you can talk 1 hour or 1.5 hour. And I would like a student to use this opportunity to ask the question or to George. Yeah, you can also introduce yourself, George, as after this about Sandbox because I think many of us know Sandbox but don't really understand the vision or anything behind the Sandbox. Yeah. Okay. Time is play and place is yours. George. Please. You can
Great.
start.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for the introduction. Let me pull up a screen to share. 1 second, then I can kind of jump in. Okay. Very good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this particular session. It's a topic that is of high interest to me. I have been a lecturer before, and teaching has always been my passion a long time ago. And I like to talk about how, especially when it comes to students, I like to share the real like work environment, especially in an industry, so that if you were to consider this as a space, you would be better prepared. Because the blockchain industry and Web3 is a very unique space. It's very different than the traditional market. It's very exciting, but very scary at the same time. And let me just share a bit about my background. So my name is George, as mentioned. I am one of the regional general managers at the Sandbox for operations. I'm also a country manager for the Sandbox for a few countries. Indonesia is one of them. It's also one of the markets that I find that is one of the most important markets in Southeast Asia. I like to say this because if you don't know how important Indonesia is to the global market, I like to say that it's very important for many reasons, which I can explain as I go along. So I've been in blockchain since 2016, and that's considered a really long time in crypto. Most of the people I know who are even longer than me were in the space since 2012. And that is considered a really long time in the crypto space because it's a market where people leave the industry very often because it's not easy to participate in the crypto space. So even though we are a game, but because the technology and all the way the company is designed uses a blockchain mentality, a blockchain company mentality. So a lot of people who come in, they try to make money, they can't, they fail, they leave, and that's a very common scenario. So I've seen a lot of it happens. I've gone through 3 bull and bear cycles and how the crypto macroeconomics, how the price of Bitcoin can affect a GameFi company, although we are not related at all, right? I've seen all of it happen. And these are things that is important to understand because the blockchain market, even though a lot of companies are not related to us, but there's always an impact to us at the same time. And everything is still being driven by Bitcoin. If you have questions or if there are things you don't understand, please make sure to put it in the chat box, because if I see the question and if I can answer it while I'm speaking, I can do that as well. And that will help you to understand better, right? Before I was in crypto, I was in MNCs. I have been working in a few different MNCs. One of them is like Sony, Leica, brands you might know. I have about 10 years of experience working in MNCs. So I'm not just a crypto guy, but I'm very traditional as well. I understand what large companies are looking for, especially when it comes to business marketing their products to consumers. And I've also been a startup entrepreneur myself. I have done more than 20 different startups. I have failed many, many times in business. I know how hard is it to start a business. But yet, if you do it right, you can be successful. But it's very difficult. You need a lot of experience. And right now, I still run two other businesses as well while doing my Sandbox job, because they are related in a way. And I have a crypto mining business, and I actually have an incubator for gaming where I help students who are building games to go from their final year to starting their own business using my understanding and knowledge of startups. So I cover a lot of topics. I've done everything from media, publishing. I've sold watches. I've had my own magazine company. I've done retail business. I used to be a CMO for F&B companies. So in terms of knowledge of different types of industries, I've done quite a bit in my day. I won't go through the whole list, but if you were to check my LinkedIn previously, I've had more than 50 jobs in my life. That includes all the startups, advisory, etc. I've done a lot of things. So I've done more jobs than I have lived life, but I've reduced it to 20 plus to make it easier to read. So yeah, feel free to ask me any questions, even you think it's a stupid question or a difficult question, because sometimes that is where you learn the most, when you ask sometimes the weirdest questions. So let me jump in and let me explain about the Sandbox. Now, for many of you who may not know about the Sandbox in detail, the Sandbox is actually a metaverse platform, and metaverse is a very big word. A lot of people have different opinions about what the metaverse is. But if you've ever watched the movie Ready Player One, Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg, it's not a new movie, but it is a movie that showcases the potential of the metaverse the best. And that's because it's based on a novel, and it was inspired a lot by terms that is very old by the book Snow Crash. I'm sure you've heard of all of this, right? But Ready Player One really showcases what a metaverse is like, because it has all the elements that make the metaverse and GameFi work. And GameFi is represented very well in the metaverse. So for example, one of the elements is that there will be different people using different skins or avatars from different brands and IPs. Now, that's a very important if you're a business person or business school person, because IP is very valuable. And a lot of brands do not like their brand to be mixing with other brands. It seems to be a very small thing, but in the actual work, achieving a world where different brands coexist together is actually very difficult, because we have to convince brands to allow this to happen. We have to allow Fist of the North Star to stand next to Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay, who's next to Paris Hilton, who's next to Snoop Dogg. This picture itself is actually very difficult to achieve, because there's so many IP rights in one photo owned by a different person, right? And a world where all the different IP can exist in one environment is actually something that's going to take time and work. But it's where it gets exciting. So because the consumers or the players who join the metaverse don't care about your IP problem, right? So when we build something, we have to build something that everyone can enjoy, and that requires a lot of back-end work. So this one picture alone took years of work, is what I'm trying to explain to you, right? So people come into the metaverse space, they represent themselves based on a character or a person or even an animal that they connect with, that they resonate with. And this is the early stages of digital IDs. Because one thing we need to understand is that, or a lot of people don't understand, especially people my age or older, is that social currency or your digital identity is sometimes more important than your real world identity, because people are interacting in the online space more than they interact in the real world nowadays, right? You don't meet people more versus texting them or video calling your friends or seeing them on social media. So the social space where you spend most of your time is actually the most important space now. So how you are seen by people in the digital space is very important. And a lot of people, sometimes when I speak to them, they don't believe this is a problem. But cyberbullying is more emotionally damaging than real life bullying sometimes, right? Because it's so public. So when we do a metaverse, there's a responsibility, because we must understand that people represents themselves in the digital space, and they have to what's that called? Know that this is very important to the people who come and play the game. So digital identities is going to be a big thing for future. I'm talking a bit about space, focusing on digital identities as well, and representing with themselves in different avatars and all that. And that's a big industry on its own. And the metaverse has one pillar. Just on avatars is a huge topic. Digital IDs is a huge topic. But IDs is very important, because when you have a space like the metaverse, transactions happen, right? People are buying and selling virtual items in the metaverse space. And when people are buying and selling virtual items, transactions happen, suddenly identity becomes very important, because there will be people who will cheat, scam, or steal if there's a real world transaction happening. And that's where we will talk about GameFi in a while as well. But in Ready Player One as well, just to use that reference, if you watch the movie, he's going in as his avatar, his skin, he's playing games, he's earning money in the games, which is usable in the real world to buy food, to buy clothes, and he's earning digital money, and he's also buying digital items to use in the game. If you look at the money, that design is no different than cryptocurrency today, right? And the digital items he's using to play the games is no different than NFTs today. So a lot of the technology and in GameFi today is designed to eventually reach that world one day, where everyone will go into the game, they will play games, make money from it, buy assets to enhance their gameplay, because that world is like the real world to them, which is a very important thing, right? There's even a scene in the movie that I thought was very interesting, where big companies hire like 50 people to play the game, and these 50 people are earning money for the company. They're like virtual miners rather than real world miners. This technically happens today already. A lot of gaming guilds did it, right? Where they hired people to play games for them to earn money in Axie Infinity when Axie Infinity was hyped. They called it what's that called? Scholar program during that time, right? Because I was curious, invested money into scholar programs to understand. So a lot of things, what I'm trying to explain to you is that movie represents what the future of the metaverse looks like quite well. Okay. So let me just jump in a bit more about the Sandbox specifically. We are a virtual world where brands connect with users. We are one of the largest blockchain companies in the world in terms of valuation. We are a unicorn status company. For those of you who don't know what a unicorn status company, it means a company that has raised money at more than $1 billion valuation, making us one of the largest in this space. And we've also been developing for a long time. We've been in development for 5 years, and our platform is one of the most mature platforms in the space that is a game metaverse that uses blockchain technology, right? And we look at it as a space where you know, this is a video of what we imagine the world will be like, where, as I mentioned just now, people would own a digital ID, visual avatar of themselves. This is actually my boss. He has his own design of himself. And my profile is of course mine, but you can also use it with different and use your avatar or other avatars that you get and explore the game world, right? And every game world is filled with what's that called? If you notice that we have a very big game world, and every area we try to bring in different brands and IPs to come into the space. Why do we bring in brands and IPs into the space? It's because people want to connect with the brands and the content that they are interested in. So if you join the metaverse, you want to have a mix of branded content and also UGC or user generated content, which I will talk about, which is part of the game economy as well. So as you can see in this video, just a quick one is where we bring in different IPs together. They all interact, play together. This is a vision of the virtual space, which is not easy to achieve. The Sandbox, we work with more than 800 partners and more than 400 brands worldwide. All the famous brands that you can think of, from artists, celebrities, to anime, to fashion, to F&B and so forth. We work with many of them to create this space where we build different type of games. And you can, and the difference between the metaverse and a regular game is that it's very open. You can do all kinds of game experience. The only thing that's similar to a game, besides all the game mechanics, is the fact that it uses a game engine to explore. You use a game engine to build to build the metaverse, right? But what you do with sports activity and so forth, right? So it can be used to not just play games, but also to market, promote, create engagement with fans. And a lot of companies are joining the Sandbox is because they want to find a new way to engage with you, their new audience, right? Because data shows that the Gen Zs spend about 3 hours today a week in the metaverse, daily, sorry, in the metaverse. You don't know it's a metaverse because it's not called a metaverse, right? But if a game has a social environment, it has an in-game economy, there are buying and selling and in together and even earn, that really considered a metaverse today's terminology. And
Hello, George. I think your connection is a
a
problem, right?
brand see inside the game and buy something from the brand they see in the game. That is a real world. Say again?
I think your connection is not is not smooth.
Not smooth.
Yeah,
Is it better now?
yeah. I think it's now better. We lost
Okay,
your
maybe because
voice,
it's too
but
much.
yeah, yeah. Now it's
Okay,
better.
because I think there's too much video assets. Let me just move this first, right? So I lost my train of thought. But essentially one of the I was sharing a bit of statistics, and a lot of brands want to enter into the space because 50% of the players and Gen Zs in particular would buy something they see from a brand they see inside a game. And because brands and companies know this, they are now trying to enter into the space. Even though sometimes you see the brand, you don't think it makes sense. Like, what is this brand doing here in the metaverse, right? We've got newspapers in the metaverse here, you know. We have banks in the metaverse, right? And they don't make games, you know. Of course, we have regular brands like Atari. We've got like Care Bears. Why brands like Care Bears, which is a very old IP, choose to come back into the metaverse is because it's a very good way for them to refresh their brand to the new generation. So everyone has a different motivation, like you see on this map. This is our game world map, right? But everyone has a different reason to be in this space, and a lot of them own an IP, and which is something I want to highlight to you. It's IP is a very, very big deal in the digital space. And the reason is because IP is one of the most valuable assets in the digital space, right? Because IP is communicated and transferred and shared digitally. So for example, if you're a music IP, people listen to music on Apple Music, Spotify, streaming platforms, right? So music is distributed in a digital space now. Video is distributed in digital space, and any content that relates to video, animation, cartoons, movies, the Walking Dead series, even manga, anime, comic books, they're all distributed and delivered digitally today. So their IP is very valuable, and the more people that sees their content, the more valuable it is. So different channels of showcasing their content is what a lot of content IP owners are looking for, because it enhances its brand value. So that is also why so many brands are interested to test and try. Not only is it about the content distribution, but it's also about, enhancing their brand and engaging with your audiences and making sales and revenue from the channel where everyone or the new generation is at right now, which is in the digital space. So I think that is the key point for you to understand. If you're wondering why any of these brands are here, it's because of you, right? They are here because you are here, you are in the digital space, and you're consuming media in the digital space, and they want to create an ecosystem where you can also make money from this space as well, right? So that's something that a lot of us are working on. So I mentioned about digital IDs and how people represent themselves. An individual can own many different avatars, represent themselves based on their personality. And this is an important thing that I maybe you will understand, but a lot of my clients who are in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, they don't. They think this is crazy. They don't understand this logic, but I do, because I've been playing games since I was 6 at hardcore. So I always understood this part of people buying skins. I collect skins. I collect a lot of stuff. Okay, even in my 40s, but I understand the interest in this, but a lot of people don't. So something to take note of, and we work with many brands to do it as well, right? Now, more statistics, just for your reference, to know the size of our company. We have 6 million users. We look at wallets connected. This is very important statistic, because these are people who connects with the platform and engages in GameFi. And we have a lot of people who owns the land as well. And these elements are all representative of GameFi, right? Like now we have created a new, what's that called, asset, which is virtual land in the gaming world. And before the blockchain, the idea of owning virtual land in games is not uncommon. You could own virtual land in games, but you could not trade them for real world money. That is where GameFi comes in. And of course, we have Sand token holders. These people are transacting. Avatar holders is 55,000. Brand partnerships and assets created and experiences created per day. Now, this is an important point about experiences created per day, because actually we are trying to be a bit like the YouTube of gaming, where anyone can make a game and share that content out and make money from it, right? It's like YouTube, where anyone can make video content. You can be a content creator today if you want to, post it on YouTube, and hopefully start making money from it eventually, right? As you build your traffic. We are trying to be the gaming version of that. So we focus a lot on creator economy. GameFi is a core and central part of our business, and I'll explain that as I go along, right? And for us, it's important to know why a lot of people are joining our platform. We are easily one of the largest in the space. It's because we've created our own no-code tools. This is completely free. And this is also an important strategy, right? In order for you to build a game platform where as many people as possible can build, we had to spend a lot of research and investment into building a tool that is as easy as possible for anyone to create. They don't have to learn any coding. Most of our creators are actually not from a game design school, right? And we have more than 300,000 creators in our ecosystem. They have never learned how to build games. They have never actually had any designs knowledge. They've never even taken a part-time course. A lot of our creators are actually people like architects, engineers, doctors, people from an unrelated industry. but had an interest to make games. They started using the Sandbox to build because of this software that we created. So although this software is free, we made this free for the public to use. It is an integral part of our strategy to let as many people as possible be a creator, because not everyone has learned to build games, right? And we are now exploring even using AI as a way to accelerate that building of games. So just imagine that one day, because of the way our platform is designed, we have our own software that is standardized across the market, you know, to standardize across the market to build, right? We are able to look at things like AI to accelerate building the game, right? That's a very important point. And I can tell you, with AI technology incoming, anyone can be a creator and not anybody can be a game maker. And I think that's also a pretty powerful thing. I know your question about cryptocurrencies. I'm happy to answer them, but because it's not part of the GameFi part, I will explain it at the end, okay? Once I'm done. So these are the brands we work with, and we focus a lot on user-generated content. As I mentioned, we work with a lot of creators. We've done boot camps all around the world. Hopefully next year we can have more Indonesian participation. But this is a big effort for us to build that GameFi ecosystem that I mentioned, right? And we spend a lot of money, we give out money. This is how people earn from us, right? So how people earn from us right now is we are giving them money to build content. And we spend a lot of money on that every year. Now, why do we do that? It's because when people go into the metaverse, there needs to be experiences. There needs to be content. It's like you're going to YouTube. If you go to YouTube and there are no videos, you'll never use YouTube, right? So we have to invest into getting the creators to come onto our platform to create content first, so that once the platform is ready and it's although it's already public, but once we reach version 1.0, that is where new people coming into the space will see a lot of experiences. They'll want to spend time and enjoy. The more time they spend on the platform, the more opportunities there is for an individual creator to monetize, right? So for example, if you are a creator who wants to sell an NFT of an item to play in your game has to be popular enough that people will spend money to buy items in the game. So, but in order for them to even spend time, they must like coming to the platform. There must be a lot of things for them to do, and that's where building the content is very important. Building very fun games is very important, and we invest, especially for the first few years like this, to bring in as much content as possible, so that and while other revenues are not ready for them, we share our revenue and profits with the creators by incentivizing them based on traffic. So if more people play your game, basically, the Sandbox distributed more money to you in the form of Sand tokens, right? So this is part of our initiative to grow that until the economy can sustain itself. And how the economy sustains itself is very simple, okay? Let me just give you a very simple logic with GameFi, right? Creator makes very good game. Players play the game, love the game, and want to do more in the game. They like the brand, they like the IP, and they will buy the assets that is being sold by the creator. The creator makes money from every transaction they sell, all right? And the platform makes a small, tiny percentage from the buyer to continue growing the ecosystem and the technology and the platform. So it's a very simple logic of supply and demand. Nothing complex when it comes to that, right? It's just that what you're selling today isn't a physical product, but a virtual product. And you are building your own IP if you're building your own game. And IP is very important because you own that IP. And if your IP is valuable enough, you can even charge for access. You can charge people to enter into your game, right? You can charge people subscriptions. There's so many different ways for you to make money from the community. But the important point is your game's got to be fun enough and popular enough that people are willing to spend money on. So we need to make sure that there are many, many popular games so that many people will want to spend money to buy assets or to gain access to your game. Very, very simple logic, right? But it's a chicken and egg problem. Who comes first? The content comes first or the players come first? And that's a business decision. It's not an easy decision. Do we spend money on bringing in as many players as possible? Do we spend money on the content? And the answer is we have to spend on both. And that's the truth. In a business scenario, when it's a chicken and egg problem, does one thing come before the other? In every scenario, the answer is you have to do both. But you have to be strong in one. Do you want to be strong in players first, or you want to be strong in content first? And in a business like ours, it's most logical to be strong in content first, because you cannot sustain the players if you bring a lot of players, but there's nothing to do. They'll leave immediately, right? But if you have a lot of content creators are willing to invest longer term. So they'll come in, and then we keep, after once we have a large number of content, that's when the players come in and we can keep them and retain them. And that's a very important point to understand why we have to invest into players game content more, but we do have to do both. So we still do our Alpha Season 4, which I'll explain GameFi with that using Alpha Season 4 to bring players in, right? But I want you to understand the reasons at the back why these are being done. So let's talk very much into about the evolution of gaming and the metaverse. Now, the metaverse gained a lot of hype during this year of 2021 when SoftBank led an investment into the Sandbox. Now, why this? And also after and right before that, Facebook rebranded to Meta and said that they were going into the metaverse. Now, these two news was pretty important because for those of you who don't know, SoftBank is the world's largest private equity firm. They invest in the levels of billions into the largest companies in the world. Most people think they're just a telco in Japan, but actually they are one of the largest investors in the world. And any investment into them is a showcase of the strength of the company, because they don't randomly invest into companies. It's not an easy thing to get a large investment from SoftBank. So for a very traditional private equity firm to invest into the Sandbox a couple of years back, it's actually a very important kind of milestone even for us, right? And that brought a lot of confidence into the space, and there was a lot of hype, and everybody was talking about it. Now, looking at some market statistics, I want to compare gaming between Web 2 and Web 3, right? Now, this is a very simple comparison, but very important one for you to understand. Web 2 or traditional gaming right now, the total size or the value of all the business is about $281 billion. Web 3 and anything related to Web 3 gaming and GameFi in general is about 10% of that. So it's the normal game industry is 10 times larger. However, if you look at the CAGR, the growth rate of Web3 gamings is higher than the traditional market, because traditional market has been established for a really long time. It's still growing aggressively, but not as quick as Web3 gaming. There's a lot more interest in Web3 gaming, and the market cap of these companies, the value of all the companies in Web2 is in the $1 trillion area, whereas games, based on their tokens and company valuations, only about 18 billion. So in terms of the size, traditional game market is extremely huge. But if you look at the investments in 2023 alone and the percentage of investment to business size, the amount of investment and interest in Web3 is bigger. So it just shows that over time, Web3 will close the gap between Web2 games, right? And that's an important point. The second thing I wanted to highlight from here is that indie games in the traditional Web2 market, indie games means independent games built by individuals or users, or one guy who made the game in his house, right? Who developed an indie game, is also about 10% of the Web2 market. So Web3 Web3 games and GameFi in its very short life of existence has now reached the same level as the entire indie game market, right? And it's expected to grow even faster than the indie game market, being like the second largest category of games in general. So that's to highlight to you the importance of this segment and why 5 years ago when we talked about GameFi, no traditional game company cared. They really didn't care. They thought Web3 was a kind of a gimmick. But then today, the largest game companies are building Web3 games and experimenting with Web3 games. My two favorite are like Ubisoft and also Square Enix. They are building Web3 games, right? And that's the thing to consider on. And indie games is contributing a lot of revenue. So if you're an independent game creator, you're jumping into the space, it's actually very lucrative now because there's a lot of support for indie games as well when it comes to revenue. And if you're in Web3, you're considered an indie game as well. So that's something that take note of. I see a Sandbox question here. I know that Sandbox project since 2021, invest but land's too expensive. First question is, what's the most beneficial for investors who own land from the Sandbox? And second, what's the big update since 2021 to 2024? Okay, I'll try to answer that as we go along. Now, but I'll answer the investor one first. I'll talk about the updates as I go along. But essentially, I would say that virtual land is at the moment most valuable for creators because you're building content. So you own the land so that you can put your content on the land itself. And how much you value it, it depends if you are able to make it into a business. But when it comes to investment, you have to decide on your own whether or not an investment decision is there. Because land is like real world land, right? There's a limit to the number of land that we have. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you think it's valuable at a particular time, worthy enough for you to invest in. That is a difficult question to answer, to be very honest. Whether or not you should buy land, because every investment depends on you, right? You have to do your own research on whether or not you feel that the current token value is there. So if you, I can go into specific references later, but it's most valuable now to creators. When we sell all the land, maybe it will start having rental value because creators want to buy land. That's something that will probably happen in a few years' time. So time in any investment is also very important. So you need to study that as well. Now let's jump into GameFi in particular. I'm going to use our Alpha Season 4 as a reference. Why? Because out of so many references I can find in the market, this is the currently live. So that you can actually go to the sandbox.game website and see this for yourself as a reference. And also, it's probably one of the largest implementations in the market now because most of the GameFi games are actually not doing well. Okay, so they're not necessarily that the future is bad, but it's a tough market right now, which I'll explain in due time. But let me just give you a bit of flavor, right? So the Alpha Season 4 is an initiative that we did where over 10 weeks, we promote 100 experiences. We focus on giving out a lot of wearables and NFTs for people who play, and we're giving out a lot of rewards to people as well, right? So just understand how it works, right? So this is our game loop where people can come into the game, play quests, earn points, level up their account, and earn rewards. All right, and this is a very simple game loop. So if you're a gamer, the idea is that you can just set up an account, play a game, level up your character, and unlike other games, you earn both items that you can use in the game and also sand tokens, which is money. But in order for you to earn sand tokens, you need to purchase an alpha pass, right? You need to buy this alpha pass, which we sell, right? It's not given out free, and that's part of the economy as well. But we sell it for 25 cents. And if you play the game up to a certain level, about let's say level 10, you would earn enough sand tokens to buy this pass, right? So it's essentially given away, but only after you've spent a bit of time to play, right? I want you to understand the economy and the transactions that's occurring here. So people are earning tokens, but they're using it to buy a pass to earn more tokens as well. And why are we giving out this money, right? Like we're giving out so many different rewards. An individual person can earn about 1,300 cents per player, each person. This is the potential earning, right? And in US dollars, this is almost 400 to 500 US dollars, which answers your question about land price. If you are putting in the effort, you theoretically can earn enough to buy a plot of land in a public sale, because we sell land for 1,011 cent, right? And 1,300 you can actually buy a land yourself. So we've also made mechanics that allows the community to earn the land that they want to own one day, right? And we're giving out a lot of tokens is because we want people to play the games. We want people to, it's a way to promote all the creators that have built games on our platform. And we are incentivizing you to try their games because many of them are new game creators. They've never built games before joining the Sandbox. And as I mentioned before this, Our goal was to make sure that the platform has enough content to make you excited. So in a way, this is time for money, right? We reward you with tokens in return for your time to try the games, test the games, and give feedback, because this is an alpha season. Now, if you've never been in the game business before, alpha, beta, and full release. Alpha means it's an early build of the game. A beta is a game which is close to final, but it's like ready for testing, and then only the final version. During the alpha phase is where in most game companies, do not release the alpha phase game into the market traditionally, because it's so raw. There's a lot of things not developed yet. It's not at the level where the game company is satisfied with. But in Web3, especially, and in the indie game market, it is common to introduce the game at the alpha stage to get feedback from the community so that they can enhance the game. So we get a lot of complaints. We get people complaining about the platform, but they don't understand is that it's still at the alpha phase, and the complaints is a very important piece of data that allows us to make a better game before the beta version and the full release, right? So in return for your time, your effort of trying the games that our creator made, and also what's that called? Engaging on a platform that is not a full version yet, we are rewarding you. So this is time for money in a way. And this is something that is enabled by GameFi. Because you see, traditionally, let me give you a different example, which I think is very important. A lot of us play games and we watch advertisements, right? Because it's a free game, we watch pop-up ads, we give our time to play the game. But your time is very valuable. If you are forced to watch an ad, giving your time, right? So in Web3, the logic is right now, in the traditional market, what happens is this. You watch YouTube, and because you want to watch the free content, they push an ad to you. The content creator makes some money from YouTube, and YouTube makes all the money. But you, who give your time for the advertisement, makes no money. Okay? But with Web3, the logic is, instead of giving YouTube all that money, which, by the way, majority of the money does not go to the content creator. Majority of the money goes to YouTube to support their servers and so forth, right? But Web3 and GameFi, what it enables is even you, the player, can earn some money because they use the smart contract to distribute the money. So if an advertiser wants to advertise in a game, they put money into the game, and the game will use a smart contract to give money to the creator and to pay you, the player or the viewer, instead of paying the platform. You get my point? So it's a much more fair system, and how this system can happen is because of smart contracts. Smart contracts will automate that payment, right? So you don't have to give it to a middleman, which is a platform like YouTube, Netflix. All these platforms are middleman platforms. They are not the content creator, although they do invest in content, but their main business is a platform, right? So you are giving the middleman money, but smart contracts now give you direct. And the best part is, because you're giving the money direct, they can give you the viewer money. So similarly for us, this is like beta testing. Instead of paying a middleman to get a beta tester and pay their beta tester, we directly pay you in the form of rewards to test the game. You see? So all this is enabled by smart contracts. So even at the early stage development of our game, we are able to now incentivize you to support us by giving us feedback, playing in the form of rewards, right? So it's an incentive for your time structured as a reward. Okay. The other thing is, of course, wearables and NFT assets, and we give out a lot of different items for people who play the season. And this is something that it's to encourage people to get used to owning these kind of NFT assets. Because one thing a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of gamers are probably very used to buying in-game items, right? But they're not used to managing a wallet and holding assets. So by giving them free through by play to earn, by playing the game and earning these assets, they can get houses, they can get wearables, they can get tickets, which is all NFTs. We are actually giving them a chance to learn and understand how to manage the asset by giving it to you for free, so you don't have a risk You just need to play and earn it as well. And then later on, you can experience wearing it on your avatar or putting it on your own land later on. All this is kind of it's a long-term indirect education, right? To build this market, which is, and so everything is intentional. Like we have a reason of why we're giving out rewards. It's not just about, oh, free stuff, but what's the long-term plan? What's the idea? It's because we are building this value so that one day you will want to own these rewards, or you want to own these NFTs, you're willing to buy them because you like the work that the creator made. So this is an early step to building that economy that we spoke about, right? And of course, avatars gets rewards as well, and we put 100 brand partners into this game as well. Some examples of brands that we talked about: Gordon Ramsay, Hell's Kitchen. We made a whole bunch of games based around Hell's Kitchen, puzzle games and stuff. Pretty fun, some of them. So I do like the latest one. Cut the Rope, which is a game IP, but they use their IP to make a different type of game in the Sandbox. The Voice, if you love The Voice, you love music, you love singing, there's a game that lets you kind of experience a little bit about what happens behind the scenes of The Voice. This is a way for the brand to kind of introduce to you things that they can't show on TV, right? Because TV, what you're just seeing is competition, the fully crafted and curated aspect. But there's a lot of people interested in the environment, like how the voice stages are designed, it's for example, and what happens behind the scene from wardrobe choices, etc. So this game is actually an expansion of what the Voice TV show is showcasing, and a lot of these games you realize are not involved in GameFi yet. They're not selling anything yet. And that's because they're still at that early stage of experimentation. But most of them eventually have the intention of introducing virtual items for sale, but they are now still investing to the whole like experience building first, right? But there is a business model later on, but they are still at the test phase, right? This is Solo Leveling, if you've watched the Netflix cartoon and also the webtoon from Korea. So it's a way for you to experience how the environment is like. There's a little game with what's that called? There's the quest is based on the actual show and the webtoon as well. So this is a way to be your favorite character in Solo Leveling, which is the hero, of course. And play the quest that he's through. Love Island, so you can see reality TV and content, and they're making avatars and skins based on their characters. And I can say quite safely that the majority of brands are monetizing the IP of the characters. So if I just feedback a little bit, you realize that everything has a character. Gordon Ramsay's image. Now, one thing interesting is that this is a monetization channel that has never existed for these brands before, right? A lot of the brands that are doing it I mean, I'm sure Gordon Ramsay probably has avatars and skins in other games, but I'm saying that there are many brands that have not ever sold their IP like this before, and like Cut the Rope, the IP has now been sold. They made new IP for The Voice. They are monetizing the avatars of this the lead character. The name it's a Korean name. I forgot his name, but it's a new way of monetization for them. Even Love Island is monetizing the visuals of the environment of Love Island and the characters. Terminator as well, it's monetization of the various IP, coming back to the whole concept of IP of the various characters that is in the shows as well. Even Playboy is monetizing their iconic bunny image of Playboy. That's their icon, and they're using it to create products, services. All this is actually about brand recall. If you see an avatar enough or an icon enough or a brand enough, you'll remember it. And this is the most powerful brand recall. If you played the Playboy experience once, you will have more brand recall than 100 billboards, because you've been immersed in that. Because billboards give you have 2 seconds of attention. You need to see a billboard more than 20 times nowadays in order to even remember the brand, because the world is filled with billboards, right? So, but whereas when you play one game, the average is 15 minutes. That's already 100 times more time spent on one brand than you would by all the media outside, which is also what a lot of brands are looking for. And of course, the most famous, one of the most famous Japanese IPs is Attack on Titan. And again, you'll see that there's a big emphasis on the character design and also the Titan itself, which is another character design, right? So now, if you notice, I don't mention a lot about play to earn. Again, this is a personal opinion, right? Now, why I don't talk about play to earn, it's because play to earn at the moment is not perfect. Okay, and what I mean is not perfect, it's very simple. When we talk about play to earn, the impression on most people's mind is I play a game and I earn money, right? They don't see it as I play a game and I earn items and rewards. In traditional gaming, that is normal. Buying a battle pass, playing it to earn items is normal. They don't call it play to earn. But in Web3, they call it play to earn because the 99% of people think play to earn is about playing for money. Now, the problem with playing for money is this. If you play for free and you earn money, the company is essentially giving you money, right? They're giving you money. But the company has to make money in order for that to have value because everyone is paying you in crypto, right? Like in the Sandbox, we pay the Sand token, you know? So we invest in it, but we have to ensure that the token has value, right? If they gave you tokens, but the token has no value, then we are basically earning nothing, right? Tokens must have value first. Now, how do tokens have value? Tokens have value when there is a supply and demand chain. You must create it. So in the case of the Sandbox, where is the supply and demand? The supply and demand is creator makes NFT. NFTs are sold as sand, which means the buyer has to buy sand tokens in order for them to buy the asset, right? That's the supply and that's the demand. That's that equation. And we are working very hard to make that a reality in GameFi. Because what we are doing is creating this economy. And a core part of the economy is that the token has value. Very simple. If we just look at a token as like US dollar, you're not going to pay for anything in the US dollar if the US dollar has no value, right? And you don't need US dollar if you have nothing that you need to buy using US dollar. You know, if you want to buy something with the US dollar, you need to have something you want to buy first that needs US dollar. So you buy US dollar to buy the item, right? Which is why the US dollar is very strong. Similarly, if you want to buy something in Indonesia, you need to, if I travel there, I need to have the rupiah because I need to go to Indonesia and pay for things using the local currency, right? So that creates a demand. So there's a logical demand and supply, right? However, in many cases, a lot of Web3 games do not have the demand and supply figured out. They have no idea. So I give you a very simple example. This is not a problem today, but in the early days, Axie Infinity didn't solve this problem. Because when you played the game, you earn money, right? You earn their token called Smooth Love Potion or SLP. Now, and in the design of the game is that every time you play the game, you earn, it mines new tokens, okay? It creates new tokens, which means more of the same money. And they keep creating new tokens because there were so many people playing it and they were giving out a lot of money, right? But what happened is that there was no way to use the money, right? There was very little ways for them to use the money. And because using the money was very low in terms of utility, there was just more tokens, but less ways to use. So there's a lot of supply, and the supply kept increasing, but there was no demand because there was no way to use the money or very little ways to use the money. So it ended up being very unbalanced, and the price kept dropping until the point it was worth almost nothing at one point. They've made changes now to reduce the supply to balance out, but in the early days, that was what happened, right? That the supply was too much that the tokens were worth nothing. So in many cases, play to earn today, there is a system, but it's very hard to get to the level where your supply and demand works. You need to put in a lot of effort, a lot of time before your supply and demand works, right? So play to earn only can work for a game if the game company puts a lot of effort to think about the demand and supply equation. So this is the reason why I'm not at the moment a big, like I understand and we do play to earn, and I think it's a very interesting model, but not every company does it well. So it doesn't mean that when you see a game that says we have play to earn mechanics, it's going to last. because they haven't determined the supply and demand part. We have, because we have designed it from the beginning. We understand that there needs to be a lot of transactions. So everything we do is intentional to build towards it. And we are still investing money until that ecosystem is ready, right? So I think that's a key point. The other thing that I feel that, is important to highlight is that as I mentioned just now, it's about how do we create value in the token. Now, one unique thing about the crypto market that does happen in traditional markets, but it's very obvious in crypto market, is that even if your token's value is low, but if your company is a legitimate company, when the Bitcoin price goes up, your token value tends to follow Bitcoin price going up, right? So for example, and I'll say this very legitimately, the Sandbox, we have done a lot of changes. So there was a question that asked about the changes we have done from 2021 until now. We've made quite a bit of technical features. We've introduced the rule system end of last year, which enables us to make more types of games. We've refined a lot of the mechanics. We've worked on very subtle things like swimming mechanics, jumping mechanics that doesn't cause nausea. There are so many subtle things that we have built into the game engine to make it better. But it's only really obvious to you if you've been exploring the games and been building the games from day one, right? If you play the game now, you will think that nothing has really been done, but that's because you don't understand a lot of the minute details that we've built. But we've basically launched a new version of the game maker every 3 months. So we've been actively building. But we built, but our token price throughout the 1-2 years in the bear market, because Bitcoin price was low, our price didn't go up, even though we have delivered like every 3-4 months, we've updated a lot of features requested by the game makers and the community, right? From gameplay mechanics and so forth. We've introduced a lot of unique things like the transformation event, where we transform your NFT to something else for a temporary time period for a campaign. A lot of it were tech implementations, very complex to introduce into the game, and that were introduced over the past year alone. And all that did not actually improve our token price. But our token price has gone up. I think today itself has gone up like 15% because Bitcoin went up to almost 100,000, right? So that is the unique thing about this industry, is that when Bitcoin is bullish, investors start looking for other tokens that they feel is legitimate and has an opportunity to rise. So the Sandbox has had the token price, and many other games token has been by the rise and fall of Bitcoin. So that's something that is unique to this industry in a way. Like in other markets, like in the traditional stock market, if a big company stock rise and fall, it doesn't really affect all of it. It has to be the entire stock market crash, then everything kind of follows, right? And it ignores the fundamentals of the company. So you must understand as well that token price, there is a certain fundamental logic of the value of the token, that the token will continue to have value. It won't go to zero because the company and the business is legitimate. But how high it goes and the price of it is actually dependent on the market sentiment. Because I used to promote and market technical analysis, looking at charts and and so I'm familiar with technical analysis as well. And there's this belief in the market that the market is efficient, which means 1 + 1 = 2. It's a perfect number, right? But it's not, Your value may be 5, but if people believe your value is 10, people are paying 10. It's not based on your real value. So it's not efficient. Or sometimes your value might be a 10, but people are only willing to pay 5 because that's what they believe. So the market and value of prices has nothing to do sometimes with the real value of a company. It's what people believe in your company, right? And that has an impact across all. And in crypto, it's very, very obvious. The crypto prices are affected by investor sentiment more than the real value of the company, right? Which is why in crypto, there are meme coins. And someone asked about meme coins. I'll talk about that at the end. But meme coins have value purely because people believe it has value. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have a function. People find functions for meme coins. They find someone who's willing to accept it for payment. But Meme coins itself does nothing. That's why the name is a meme coin. It's a joke coin that people just believe have value. So again, there's no fundamentals involved in it. It's just pure belief. So that creates the demand, right? So then the supply shortage causes value to go up, right? And as I mentioned, the goal of GameFi in general is to build this new economy, right? The new economy creates new kinds of jobs. All this is new kinds of jobs. A content creator is not just about someone who dances on TikTok anymore, but it could be architects who's building content. And even TikTok, there are architects doing content. Now, content creation will span all different sectors, and so will game economy as well. Anyone can come into a game economy space, bring their own content in, and monetize it. One day, we hope to see like virtual real estate, virtual tour guides. People are bringing people to visit virtual environments, like a tour guide explaining the history of things in game, right? And I believe all this there are many of this that already exist, and it's about growing this economy. Because when all this input of value exists in the metaverse and gaming, that is where the financial aspect can happen. Because all the part or the finance part in gaming is actually just an infrastructure to enable transactions, right? It's a very simple thing. You use blockchain and smart contracts to enable transactions. The difference is the transactions goes direct to you. It doesn't go to a middleman, which is what most of the digital platforms are being built. So that's really core and essential to GameFi, right? Now, why are we doing this? It's because actually the Sandbox used to be a mobile game many, many years back. 2012 to 2018, we were the third highest selling Sandbox game. A Sandbox game is like Minecraft, it's like Roblox. We were the third actually with 40 million downloads. And what we found when we were doing the game was we had hundreds of thousands of creators making interesting assets of the game, but couldn't make money from the game. And that was the same situation with Minecraft and Roblox. They had so many creators who were making content, but there was no direct way for them to make money. So unlike the rest of those platforms who are now starting to, over the last few years, starting to make ways for creators to make money, we very early decided to switch to blockchain and create the current Sandbox metaverse because we wanted to incentivize people that were already making content on our platform. So this was the real reason why. We had a community of creators, but they were not making money from us. And we didn't have a good mechanism to allow them to make money. So what we did was we built this current version of the Sandbox, which is Web3 enabled blockchain, so that creators could directly make money and cut out the middleman using smart contracts. So a creator can put an asset for sale and get all the proceeds they want. They can price it however they want. They know exactly how they make. These are all things that cannot happen if you use a third-party platform or a middleman platform because they control the price, right? YouTube controls how much you make. You have no control over how much you make, right? And most gaming platforms, that has a monetization, the fees are set by them, not by you as the creator. And that's really the reason why we shifted, but many of the other platforms didn't, because it's all about controlling the money, right? So GameFi is a way for us to enable transactions to go direct to you and to put the power into the hands of the creator. And if you're an indie guy, you just love games, you want to make money in your home, you want to make money on your own as a small business owner, and you make an effort to sell your assets. We know some creators like in Philippines and Indonesia, where they put a lot of time to promote, market their games and sell their assets. They make a good living US dollars assets, but it is a legitimate business individual, right? And that's what we are trying to build in our GameFi, right? Now, of course, talking a bit about the whole GameFi thing, and GameFi especially is enabled by NFTs. I know NFTs is like a dirty word now. A lot of people don't care about NFTs, but NFTs is the technology that powers a lot of these asset transactions because it's just a technology that is suitable for digital assets, right? And it's a new revenue stream for people and brands, and it runs complementary to their existing business as well, which is why a lot of brands are interested in it as well. It's a new form of monetization. You can sell avatars, collections, you can sell assets, you can sell even more if you're unique. We've been looking at things like interoperability. This is the thing that's unique to NFT technology, which other traditional games don't have. It's the ability for you to take one game asset, so one sword or one avatar, and use it in a completely different game. NFT technology makes that possible. A lot of other games, and it's possible without the company getting involved. What it means is that the sandbox doesn't need to get involved to make your NFT usable in, let's say, Decentraland. Okay? You don't need to ask my permission to make it usable in Decentraland either. You can make it compatible. Decentraland can make it compatible if they want, and that is fine and allowable and acceptable in the NFT space because interoperability is one of the core values that this technology provides. So it's an interesting thing. So it's what it essentially means is that, a brand like Nike can say, hey, you can make it Adidas compatible. I know it sounds a bit weird, but I'm just saying and you can use Adidas accessories and stuff like that. And it's up to you to do it. That doesn't happen in the real world. Real world, they'll block that. But in the digital space and in NFTs and Web3, this is actually potentially possible if the brands allow it. And in the sandbox, we allow any platform to make compatibility with the sandbox NFTs. It's perfectly fine. We encourage it. And that's something unique with NFTs as well. The other thing that I feel is an opportunity for the market and make GameFi even more interesting is that the phygital aspect, right? Like now I've experimented, I'm trying to make like trading cards with avatars, but the card is actually a wallet that has the avatar inside, right? So you can just immediately sell it in a physical space and get the virtual item as well. And you also keep the card as a collectible. This is something that I've been working on for a few months now. And there are many different companies coming out with digitals. I know a lot of collectible companies that sell characters, they sell like One Piece, or they sell like Bugs Bunny, and but it's actually linked with an NFT as well, and that's we call phygital, right? So this is it's a new segment. It's not new as a concept, but as a business, it's still very new. A lot of people haven't gone deep into it yet, but a lot of market potential for this segment as well, which is the phygital part, collectibles with a physical and digital variations of it linked. The other thing that I think is unique about Web3 and GameFi, which is just the DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. That's the full term. But what this is it gives control and power back to the players and owners of land and the token. Now, why is this unique? Is because if you are a gamer and if you've played a game for a long time, sometimes your favorite games don't do things the community wants. But you, as a player, have no right to tell the company to do anything. You can complain until they make changes, but if you just don't like something, and a lot of you who play a game don't like something, usually there is no direct way of you as a player or a creator on the platform to influence any decision making. With a DAO's mechanism enabled again by smart contract, not only does your virtual items is fun to use and play, your land is usable for you to create games, and your token for you to buy assets, it's also representative of your right to vote on a direction of the game. So if, for example, you said that one day you feel like the sandbox should invest into making what's that called? Something that you want, like a special sword. I'm just giving a very random example. May not be a good example, okay? But you wanted them to make a sword, or you wanted to make an avatar because you think this person is very, very popular and they should invest into doing it. You can submit a proposal and the community votes. And if it says yes, the company has to do it. Okay? And the Sandbox has allocated 25 million sand, which is about 10 million US dollars, I think, um, uh, to the community so that gamers can really be involved in it. This will be a real platform where it's by gamers for gamers. You can dictate. A lot of companies do this, but they're not actually following through on this. But to us, it's a very unique way for the community to get involved, landowners to get involved. This is the extra utility. This is why there's more demand creation, because now you can directly dictate the direction of the game. So some examples, like someone proposed a way to use AI to create the game environments, and they wanted investment for it. The community voted. It was a yes. It went through. In the Philippines, one of our creators wanted to create the Sandbox Academy, right? They wanted to create an officially allowed and sanctioned Sandbox Academy. And just think of it, it's not easy for anyone to allow someone to use their brand, right? Like the Sandbox. So a Philippines creator, individual guy, wanted to run the Sandbox Academy, put a proposal up to run the Sandbox Academy for 7 months, all right, across universities. And the community voted for him to get the grant, and he's been running the Sandbox Academy since. So these are not just ways for people to dictate, but it's also ways for you to talk about how to grow the ecosystem, how you can be a part of the ecosystem. Say, I want to run a tournament for gaming. Can I submit a proposal? And the community can vote on it. And now you are suddenly allowed to run an official tournament for the brand, which is something that doesn't happen in a lot of things that I collect. For example, I like to collect trading cards. I like to collect One Piece trading cards, basketball trading cards. So, and I see tournaments happening, and I'm like, hey, I want to run a tournament. Is that possible? There is no way for you to propose to Bandai that you want to run a tournament, right? But if you had a DAO, you're cool, we like you, you have experience, let's allow you to run a tournament for us. You get what I mean? So it's just a unique way of working with the community, and it's a very strong way for community building as well, because the community now is involved in the decision making, and that is all powered by blockchain. And it's good for the company too, because now, so let's say for example, right, the Sandbox, we want to be in Indonesia. We work with Indonesian partners, but we don't have an office officially. And we rely on the community a lot to build in Indonesia. Now, and if there are aspiring entrepreneurs in Indonesia who wants to build a Sandbox Academy, they want to do something in the space, suddenly I can run a tournament or an academy in Indonesia because the community wants to do it. They submitted to the DAO, they voted on it, and they actually do it. This is a very powerful use of blockchain technology, right? So now, even though a game company doesn't have an office there, it doesn't mean they don't have a presence, because the community can get involved. And so a lot of real established game companies understand community value. So this is something that's powerful, and we put 25 million sand on it. I have a few more slides left, and then I'll go into questions. So this makes it, I think, about 1.5 hours I've spoken, I think. So, and we'll have enough time for all your questions. In 2023, I was asked to give a statement about the industry by Blockchain Game Alliance. This is an annual report by BGA. BGA is one of the largest game alliance associations in the world for gaming, where the Sandbox, our COO, is the chairman, I think, or I think now or at one point, can't remember. And I talked about this. I said that the coming years, AI being incorporated into gaming is going to be very critical part of its growth, right? And what I was trying to explain with this, because there was just a one-liner, is that I fully believe that AI is going to hyper accelerate the metaverse and gaming and GameFi as a whole. Okay, it's gonna do a lot of for it's gonna start out with first the development side, right? That's where it's gonna start. It's gonna enable creators, builders to build as quickly as possible. You can be an indie game developer and build much better games because you are being enabled by AI. You can be a non-game creator, but because you can imagine how a game is like, you can imagine game mechanics, you can get AI to assist you to build the game. 80% of the work can be done, and then a game dev can come in to refine. And that's very, very powerful because right now, just building the game is a challenge. But with AI, suddenly building a game is not it's not more complex than doing an Instagram post. Just think of it that way, right? That the market potential is huge. There'll be more people creating content. The content is going to get richer, better, faster. You're going to have a whole, like a slew of games that is going to come out, which is being built partially or fully by AI, right? That's one area. The other thing that will make gaming very powerful, and by the way, this to me is a catalyst of why GameFi will work, right? It's when the game experience is enhanced, it's more immersive. And most people think immersive is about VR. Immersion is not just about VR. That VR and virtual reality is just one of the components of making things as realistic as possible. What creates an immersive environment is realism, right? So let me give you an example. If you were to play a game right now, when you speak to a character in the game, it's scripted, right? You say A, he gives you response B, he'll give you some choices to respond, and then based on your response, it has a fixed response to you, and it doesn't remember any interactions that you may have had with it. But with AI, imagine you were to go into a game today, you play a game today, and you said, like, how's your cat? And they said the you can ask any question, open-ended, and the character will be able to reply. And he says, oh, I got a new cat today, I'm very happy. Then 6 months later, you talk to the guy, the same NPC, and you say, how's your cat? And the NPC can say, oh, since we last spoke 6 months ago, my cat died in an accident. And then in the game, the environment will have a little grave for the cat. And the world evolves with you. And this kind of realism will make people stay in the virtual space more because suddenly everything you do matters. Everything you do changes the environment. The world and the game engine will evolve with you. Characters will remember you. You can speak to the same NPC 10 times. It will sound like a real human. And then he will remember every conversation he's had with you. And you suddenly have that friend in the virtual space, but it's purely AI. You can play quests and play games with AIs that you didn't know were not real people. And that will solve what they call the player liquidity. I learned this term the other day, right? In Indonesia, actually, by the other panelists. It's about player liquidity because right now, when you want to play a multiplayer game, you have to wait for matching. And some games, if they have less players, you can't even match, so you can't even get into the game. Now that gap can be filled by AI, and you won't feel it's an AI because it's so smart. It can talk back with you while you're playing a game. It can interact with you. It remembers you if you played with you before, and it can evolve and become better players in the game. So you can be a solo player, not have any friends, and still go into a game and feel like you're playing a multiplayer game because AI is going to evolve. And there's so many different tech there, and I'm already testing one of them, hopefully to introduce it as a pilot next year in the sandbox as well with AI agents, right? So AI, and because the world is more immersive, it's more realistic, there's more interaction, there's more quality interactions, you want to spend more time, you're willing to invest in it. That's why you will buy items. That's why you invest into your social, because like imagine if you are to buy a shirt for your avatar, you speak to an NPC, the NPC says that looks very nice on you. Then you feel happy, you want to buy more clothes to wear with your avatar. It seems kind of silly and small, but actually it is going to hyper accelerate the market of gaming in general, not just Web3, all gaming, right? But because of transactions and trading and the ability to sell peer to peer, I believe Web3 gaming will accelerate faster because the value of the items that they get in the game is more valuable because it's tradable, right? So and that's a bit of my hypothesis for the next 3 to 5 years. I don't think it's that far away. I think in 3 years you'll start seeing a lot of realism in games. 5 years it will be common. 10 years from now, nobody will even realize because everything is like already normal. It will be normal in 10 years from now. So it's also exciting, but it's also very scary because AI will impact jobs, right? Because you can do more with less. But I like to see the positive side where anyone can do more with less because of AI. So, and with that, I hope I've answered many questions. Many of the questions you might have. Shall I just jump straight into questions, Andre?
Yeah. You can just answer the question, please.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so let me see. This question. In order to be able to use or play games, we need more knowledge in terms of technology compared to playing games in general. With many people who don't understand this tech, is there a strategy that the Sandbox wants or is implementing to educate or engage people to be able to use and play the games of the metaverse? Now, that's a good point. The first point is about complex, right? Like you need knowledge. A big part of the industry and what we are doing is to make it so that you don't need knowledge. That's our job, right? As the builder, we must make it so that you don't need to learn something to play something. If you have to learn something to play something, it should be very short, right? So, and we've innovated that as much as possible. So, what are the complexities or challenges in the Web3 gaming? Number one is about the wallet, like crypto wallets. A lot of people don't know how, don't know want to manage and all that. We have to make that as simple as possible. We do spend R&D. Our hope is that when we launch the version 1.0, you need to log in. You don't even know it's a wallet. You don't even know that there's a real crypto wallet, etc. You can immediately create an account. A wallet is made. You won't even know, and you play like a normal game, but the assets are sitting in a real wallet, and then later on you can transfer it out, and it's seamless. That is our job, right? So the second thing is, of course, Sandbox Academy. We're hoping that, and like you say in Indonesia, if we have a Sandbox Academy, it'd be great if someone were to propose and the community can vote on it, because then we'll have something that's permanent, long term. We would like to work with universities so we can park the Sandbox Academy inside. That's something that maybe we can work with Telkom University, who knows, right? But that's also part of our strategy. We'll be running more boot camps and we'll run AMAs. So we do the education part, but in the long run, education should not be required to play. It should be required to build because building is complex and building revolves around more than just playing the game. But to play, the end game for us is that you don't even need to learn anything. You can just load and play. That's the goal. And most GameFi games are working on that. If they don't work on that, then they are not. I would say that they lack experience, in gaming, right? The next question, is there any space in future for fashion brands to tap into the gaming industry, marketing strategy, and customer revenue? Actually, fashion is one of the earliest adopters of gaming and metaverse. They do a lot of branding into it, right? They do a lot of consumer engagement in it. Gucci is the most famous example. Gucci has touched everything in gaming. They're one of the earliest to go into gaming. So you don't have to wait for them to come in. Charles and Keith is in the Sandbox. I'm very close with them in Singapore, and they've built experiences in the Sandbox already. So they are using it as a marketing strategy today, and they are exploring, and they are also focusing on building revenue. But as a start, it's all about creating the right engagement. There is no one way to be in the metaverse. Every brand and every entity that joins the virtual space or in the metaverse environment has to find the secret sauce for themselves. Like, what is the best way to engage and monetize? So the market is generally speaking in experimentation. They might be selling something, but it's still just a test, right? For example, many car companies have launched NFTs, but it has gone nowhere because it was just a test and there was no real design plan. It was just an experiment. So they've launched it, sold, made some money, and then did nothing. I'm not going to name specific names, but there's been many projects and brands who did that, right? Who just launched something, didn't know what it was. They were just testing, and there was no long-term plan for it. They just sold, and fans bought it because they loved the brand, but they got burned, right? So that exists, right? That exists. But there is others who are really experimenting well, trying to find a new way and not burn the consumers as well. And that's where Sandbox comes in. We try to educate the brands. So actually right now there's more need for us to educate brands than to educate players, because brands need to come into the space in the right way. They cannot be just launching something, make money, and then leave the consumers, which happens too much in Web3 with brands, right? Because they all think that it's easy money. So we do a lot of education. So every brand we work with is there to do long term, right? And to develop a long-term marketing strategy and build a new revenue stream. But it's still an evolving space. So I have to say that most people haven't figured out the right way to do it yet. You want to ask about another game called Off the Grid, has an NFT system and their own crypto to buy those NFT. How viable is the game in the current blockchain gaming landscape? Do you see as a competitor? Um, I don't even know this game, to be very honest. So I don't want to comment on the game that I don't know. I definitely don't see them as a competitor. It's viable if the tokenomics makes sense, but I don't know the tokenomics, so I don't know if it's viable. And I don't know who they target. However, I would say the more games that are coming into the space building legitimately, the sandbox always welcomes. We don't view any game as a competitor. In fact, many game companies build on the sandbox, like Ubisoft, like Square Enix. They all have like games, and we're happy to work with their own games. So I'm working with an IP I can't mention yet because we haven't announced, but the IP is building their own game. And we are discussing with them on how the game that they build with us, the NFTs with us, is usable in their game as well. So everyone is a friend because the industry is too new for us to look at people as competitors. We should look at growing the pie and not eating the pie, if that makes sense, right? So that's what I would say. If this is a great game, I hope they are a good game and I hope them success. Nobody is a competitor, right? What if Ethereum surpasses Bitcoin in the capital market? Is the price of the token will follow Ethereum or follow Bitcoin? Um, the market will be dictated by the one that is dominant. Okay. So there is this Bitcoin dominance ratio where now Bitcoin is about 50% of the market cap of the whole crypto market. So it is very difficult for Ethereum to surpass Bitcoin, number one, because their dominance is already so big. That means one cryptocurrency is 50% the value of the entire market, right? That is number one. I would say almost impossible, but I'm saying almost. You never know, right? Things may happen. There's no such thing as never in the crypto space, but I doubt that will happen. But if it does happen, it's likely, yes, the market will follow the largest, most dominant. But it has to reach the level where Ethereum is like 30, 40, 50% the market cap of the whole market. That, to me, seems very unrealistic. If you look at the Bitcoin ETFs, right, that has been launched in the US, you look at the inflows of people buying Bitcoin versus the inflows of Ethereum. It's so huge. Like every day, you will see people buying more than selling Bitcoin. But Ethereum is not the same. Some days there's more buys, some days there are more sells. It's not as strong because you see in the crypto space, people view Bitcoin as the gold standard or the US dollar of the crypto space. It is the most dominant. It is the cryptocurrency that every cryptocurrency is referenced against. So when a currency or a cryptocurrency reaches that status, it is very difficult for you to overcome it or overtake it, right? So when it comes to the traditional market, people who are not in the crypto space, the first thing they will buy is Bitcoin because they only know Bitcoin, right? And that's why it's so dominant. So the probability of Ethereum surpassing it is very low. Next question. How do player-driven supply and demand dynamics shape the economy of sandbox games, and what strategies can developers use to maintain balance? Okay, that's a good question. How about big impact of the value of in-game items like maybe currency inflation or deflation in the stability of sandbox game economies? This is actually a really good question, and it's an open debate in the market. Okay, so first and foremost, player-driven supply and demand is actually very difficult to achieve in the first place. Okay, it's very difficult to achieve it because most Web3 or GameFi games is designed wrong. Okay, and I'm saying, and this might get me in trouble, but I've believed this because I have my innovation hub and I'm telling people all the time. The problem with most GameFi games is they build the fi before the game. They build the finance before the game. And they prioritize all their development into the financial aspect and not the game aspect. And which is why a player-driven supply and demand dynamics doesn't exist for many games It's because they built the financial thing, but they don't realize that the core value of player demand is driven by the game. And I always tell people this, there is no need to reinvent the wheel when building GameFi. GameFi actually has existed for many years, even before Web3. Every game in the market is well established with a very straightforward revenue channels, right? They build a good game, they have an in-game currency, and in-game currency usually can be purchased with real cash. That's how the games make money. And the in-game currency is used to buy items in the game, right? So it's tokens and NFTs, exactly what I said. And if your game is fun and the game design is really good, people will desire the asset. The problem with most GameFi is people only desire the currency. They don't desire the asset because they don't care about the game. Does it make sense? So in order to achieve a perfect player-driven supply-demand dynamic, they need to focus on game first. And most GameFi companies don't do that because they were set up to make money. They were not set up to make a good game. And that's the problem. So it requires a lot of investment. A typical AAA game needs $100 million to make. Let's just put it that way. It's a very expensive thing to do. So it's actually better to make a simple game that's very fun and introduce tokens and assets than to build the financial part first. But almost every GameFi starts with financial part first. And most of them don't focus on the game quick enough. That means they raise a lot of money, but they don't build the game to a level that people want to play and all that. So, and they don't raise enough money to focus on the game. So first and foremost, the whole psychology of the game development must be there. And the Sandbox, we have focused a lot into game development, a lot into the tools to make better games, a lot of education and emphasis into creators so that we can create the demand, but with the good games. This is a very, very important point, right? It's a core success factor. Any GameFi that ignores gameplay will fail because nobody wants to play the game. Simple logic, right? So the second thing is about balance, and balance has a lot of areas, right? Balance is about the working on scarcity. So for example, the next stage I think for Sandbox developers is once they've built very good games, they've got a core group of players, they need to start making their assets and managing the scarcity, common items versus legendary items, right? We do have a mechanic in place to manage that in the Sandbox, but the developers need to learn it in order to maintain balance of values, right? And that's something that probably there might be more education on it as the industry matures. That's one thing. Now, what about the impact of currency inflation and deflation? That's a good question, all right? That depends on the game's design. Some games the developers will adjust the asset prices based on the token prices, therefore adjusting it to real world values in the game economy, right? It shouldn't deter, but it's also up to the developer to adjust their pricing because they're a business owner, right? If you're a game, you are always adjusting the price of the market. So even if, let's say, the sand price goes up really high, the developer should adjust their prices lower to reflect the real world value. And they need to learn to do that, right? It's like, and it doesn't always happen. So sometimes inflation needs to exist because the creators are going through inflation themselves. So when it comes to inflation, this is not a game or a platform problem. This is a market problem, right? They have to adjust for inflation. But when it comes to adjusting to real world value, that is easily adjustable by the developer themselves, right? In future, we might even introduce dynamic pricing so that prices will be adjusted to the dollar value, for example, automatically, so that the buyer is not impacted. They don't spend more. They spend the exact amount. And we are also introducing fiat payments, I believe, in due time. That's something that we believe we should be doing so that people who don't want to be involved in inflation of the token, they don't want to hold that because they are worried about up and down and they just want to buy the assets in the game. We might introduce so that people can just pay cash. So the price is always fixed, right? To your local currency. So these are measures that we are looking into. And again, it's also a responsibility of the platform to look at how the market evolves. There's always changes in the market and kind of find the fairest way to manage that. With many businesses entering the metaverse, how can companies establish a unique value proposition and avoid becoming just another player in an oversaturated market? The answer is experiment. I really can't tell you. You see, a lot of people want to believe that there's a secret sauce, but actually the secret sauce is unique. You have to even in traditional marketing, you have to find a something that's unique, right? Like that day, I saw a video of a Burger King campaign in Korea where they went around and gave people on the spot tattoos which can redeem a free Whopper. And people criticized them for that strategy, but it actually increased their sales by 200% during the campaign period. So sometimes it's about trying, experimentation, and businesses have to do that. You have to innovate and be willing to step out of the norms in order for you to compel and engage your audience. Even though some people might call you stupid at first, because your audience and your revenue and your sales is what matters the most. So my only answer is businesses have to experiment. It is their responsibility, right? But they have to be willing to invest in experimentation. And one of the challenges of why there is no unique value proposition is because they don't experiment. And this is the truth. I've advised many companies, and the problem is not that they are not capable of it; they just don't want to do it. You know, and that's a big gap. Considering Indonesia's huge market potential, limited tech among traditional businesses, how does Sandbox make it easier for these businesses to transition and integrate into the operations, into the virtual ecosystem? Now, we provide a lot of support. Like we provide an ecosystem of builders. So if they've never built games before, we've got experienced builders. But the tech gap is there. A lot of people play our games in PC cafes instead of, because we don't have a mobile version yet. And it is a huge potential market. But Indonesia has always been known to be one of the hardest markets for most companies to access, because the country is huge. The company doesn't have the ability to access because it's very distributed, many different areas, islands, etc. It's very hard. Even when I was in MNC days selling Sony consumer products, Indonesia has always been hard. It's because it's not just about because I don't think there's limited tech knowledge. I actually don't think Indonesia's knowledge is as low as people think. And I've been in the tech space, I've been visiting Indonesia since the first day I started doing crypto until today. I do not believe that at all. I actually think the tech knowledge is better than what most people believe, and it's at a sufficient level for them to understand, right? That to me is the truth. I think businesses and traditional businesses look down on Indonesia's tech knowledge. Okay, that's my belief. Okay, and traditional businesses, the problem of them accepting new technology is not an Indonesian problem; it's a global problem, because most companies are owned by old people. They don't understand. It has nothing to do with the society's understanding of technology. It's because most companies are owned by old people. So for us, we spend a lot of time doing education for C-level because they don't understand, because they are all really old. Most companies are owned by people in their 70s, right, or 60s. So that gap is a generational problem that exists even in Singapore. So, and my job and part of our job is educating them, telling them about the potential, and getting them to empower their team members in the younger generation who do understand to implement. We need to encourage them. So it's a very long-term process. We didn't sign 400 brands because there were 400 ready companies to do the digital transformation. We had to teach every one of them. We got to teach their team members, and we got to get them to empower their team members to apply. And that is a very long-term process. And we spend years doing that, right? It's not just an easy thing. So transition takes time. Man, even with universities, some universities took me 1.5 years before they were willing to accept Web3 in the university as a topic. You guys are ahead of the curve, because there are still many universities that do not want to touch this topic because they're afraid of it, right? But fortunately, I think Indonesia has now a top-down support, which is important. Without that, it wouldn't even happen. So that's another thing for you to think about. How can the evolution of NFTs as a revenue mechanism impact the digital economy by redefining digital ownership and monetization across industries, art, gaming, virtual assets? Okay. And what critical insights from early successes can business and creators leverage to maximize their potential while addressing challenges like scalability, environmental concerns, and market volatility? I feel there are like many questions within this one long question, right? I would say that NFT technology itself doesn't need an evolution. It's already ready for use in the market. It is the platforms and the solutions that utilizes NFTs that needs enhancement or improvements to make it more seamless, easy, like wallets need to be easier to manage, etc., and so forth, right? And it's not redefining digital ownership. To me, it is the core way of digital ownership already. Let me give you an example. Last year, I was in Hong Kong FinTech Week. Hong Kong FinTech Week is a government-supported FinTech event, and it's participated by many banks and regulators. And in that event, there were many banks, and I think there were 2 or 4 banks that were showcasing the Sandbox as a part of their strategy or as their main, like the DBS had a whole booth just on the Sandbox experience, right? And that's a bank, okay? And during the whole event, people were talking about VA or virtual assets, okay? They didn't want to call it NFTs, but the technology was NFTs. You're looking at financial institutions, regulators, banks talking about NFTs. They're just using a different label. They're all already looking at it as a way of digital ownership, as a core way of digital ownership. So rather than think of it as redefining the monetization process and the digital ownership, it's already being adopted and accepted as the primary vehicle for digital ownership. NFTs is not new. We've been talking about NFTs since 2017. I have. And we talked about using NFTs as a way for us to put to represent ownership of real world properties. And today they call it RWA or real world asset tokens. And NFTs, nothing has changed, just the name. The adoption of it has been worked on since 2017, but only today, after so many years, is mainstream regulators talking about it. So I want to change your mind in thinking that NFTs is new. It is not new. It's been worked on for such a long time, and only now we are starting to see it, and it's becoming the mainstream adoption. So it's not an evolution. It's already there. It's just that we are still just at the early stages of it being there, right? And monetization is straightforward. Once you have digital assets there, it's a matter of buying and selling it. Monetization exists. Just, I think yesterday I saw the news, Sotheby's sold to Justin's son a banana taped to a wall for 6 million. That sells. A fresh banana taped to a wall sold for what, 5 or 6 million US dollars. Why would people have issues buying NFTs in art format, art in NFT format? Right? I'm just saying, you know, this is not something that needs work on right now. What we need to work on is just the delivery and making it easy for people to access, right? And a lot of people are doing that, right? So there are already a lot of early access, critical successes from it. Sandbox is considered an early success. We've done a lot in the space. There are other things that works with NFTs that I think has been quite scalable, like Vive or VV, depending on how you do it. They do like DC Comics. They do a lot of IP, but it's NFT collectibles, which uses AR to showcase the artwork in their own spaces. So that for me is a good example. Environmental concerns are not as big as people think. The only environmental concern is actually Bitcoin mining, because most blockchains today are built on proof of stake, which doesn't have high power usage, doesn't require GPUs, and doesn't create more heat, and doesn't add to global warming, right? The only one that adds to it is proof of work. And most of the GameFi platforms, okay, actually all of them, none of them use proof of work blockchain. And no GameFi will use proof of work because it's too slow. It's not going to verify transactions fast enough for a gaming environment. So none of them will use it. So there's actually no environmental concern. The environmental concern was brought up by the community who didn't understand blockchain. But actually those, and I can tell you a very famous example, Ubisoft, when they introduced their NFT for one of their games, they had to tell the community that there is no environmental concerns because they're not using a blockchain that uses much power. It's very little power. It's Netflix uses way more power than most blockchains. Okay. Netflix alone probably uses more power than all the proof of stake blockchains in the market. Okay. So if you use Netflix, you're actually doing more environmental harm than 90% of the blockchains in the market, right? And Ubisoft got criticized even though the facts says that they were not having any environmental concerns. People kept pushing the idea. The only thing that causes environmental concerns, which you can ban if you want to, is actually Bitcoin mining or any proof of work mining that causes a lot of heat, okay, and uses a lot of power. So that's the main thing. Market volatility is not something that I can say that it's that hard to address. If you're very worried about market volatility, make a stable coin. You don't need to make a token that has increasing value, right? Stable coin solves that problem. A lot of people are against it. You know why people don't introduce stable coins? It's because they want to make money from volatility. So that is the game developer's choice, not because the market insists on it. They can make that one token or two token can redeem X amount of items in their game. They don't because they want to make money, right? And all like early companies like ours, our design was a bit simpler and we wanted the people to be able to benefit from the upside. But it's by design. You can make a stable payment solution in the sandbox. We're not going to stop it. It's completely fine, right? So I think that will address the volatility issue. When countries introduce their own central bank digital currencies, games can incorporate that and just charge that. They don't have to charge anything that is market volatile. Given the interest in virtual spaces, this is the last question, by the way, and I think I'm on time to take all of it. If you have one more question, you can put in if you want, but this is the last question I see. Given the growing interest in virtual spaces and blockchain-based games, can you explain more how local Indonesian brands or game developers could participate in the sandbox? How might local businesses use the platform to engage with their audiences, whether through virtual land, NFTs, or brand experience? So one of the things that is the reason for Sandbox popularity is that anyone can build on it. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to sign an agreement with me. You can get a piece of land. You can download the game maker for free. You can start building today and you can publish, right? So there is no barrier in participation, first and foremost. We, of course, assist if people want to go into a partnership with us, they want to go into a private land purchase with us, and they want to learn how to build and all that. We can provide guidance and we provide support and we provide access to our ecosystem. We have a lot of solutions, and that's how we help the local companies. If they want to, we are always ready to help. And that's why there is a country manager for Indonesia. My job is to support the Indonesian market. They can ask me for all kinds of support. No business is too small. So we've gotten individuals who come to us to say, I want to build a gallery. Can you help me? I'm like, okay, let me help get someone to build you a gallery. And they just invest into it. And we don't charge. Like that's something that we support a lot of them. They want us to help more. We do have a package where we provide like a service level agreement to support them over 6 months or 1 year. We also have that as well. So that's the accessibility is there, right? How would they use it to engage with their audience? Again, to be honest, it's really about experimentation. I think I've mentioned that many times because an F&B business will have very creative ways to use the space very differently than fashion. And even in F&B, there's so many ways. They can do Diner Dash in the sandbox and play a Diner Dash type of game and make money from that, which has nothing to do with maybe their own business, F&B business, but it just uses the same brand, right? Or they can do a food tour experience. Those are very different experiences. But what works for them depends on their business and their willingness to market. So one of the other big issues in the market right now is that there are a lot of people who this is a real example, and I'm not criticizing them. I think this brand didn't know. So Porsche, the car company, introduced an NFT previously, right? But I think because they were so afraid of the NFT market, they didn't market the NFT that they were selling using their main NFT channel. They set up a new, their main Twitter channel or X channel. They set up a new X channel to promote only the Porsche NFT. The problem is people didn't believe it was official because it wasn't being marketed by the official account. It was marketed by a brand new account, which has it seems to be associated, but people couldn't verify. And they got criticized so bad, they realized that, oh, trust is very important. And they had to market it on their main account. When they did that, it immediately sold out because people believed it was real. There is a big resistance among companies to promote on their official channel because they are scared of this technology and they are worried about what shareholders and stakeholders will see. Because as I mentioned, most people who own companies are pretty old and they don't understand this technology. So if a brand wants to succeed, it's not just about the strategy they deploy, which they might have to try many different things before they find something that works for their brand, but they have to be willing to market it proudly. If they don't market it, no matter how good the experience is, it will fail. All right. And we've seen it happen so many times. We have worked with many brands who refuse to market their own made game. They made it, they designed it, they did everything in it, but they refused to market it because they were afraid of what people might think. And if a brand is not willing to face the market and say, hey, we think this technology is interesting, it's the future, we want to invest into it, this is our first try. If they're not willing to do that, they shouldn't participate in the metaverse. They shouldn't participate in Web3 because they're just wasting money. They have to dare to do it, okay? And dare to market it. That's critical. So it can be a bad experience, well marketed, will still succeed better than a good experience with no marketing. So if you're a business owner, I cannot stress enough that marketing is pretty important. Okay. I think there's one last question, and I'll take that. I think time's up, right? One last question here. It was sent to me directly. There are some rug pull cases in GameFi that have damaged public trust in the crypto ecosystem, while regulations on digital assets, blockchain, and crypto-based transaction in Indonesia is often changing, creating uncertainty for developers and players. In my opinion, how can GameFi design and work with regulators to build transparent token standards to mitigate risks such as rug pulls without stifling innovation and reducing GameFi's appeal to the global community? Again, it seems like a few questions. Number one, rug pulls exist, whether it's in GameFi or it's in traditional market. Just Google how many scam Kickstarter games have existed. This is not a GameFi or a Web3 problem. Again, it is just the one that gets the most attention. Just Google it. I've watched some horror stories. People invested 10 million into games on Kickstarter and it's been in development hell, aka nothing done for like 7 years. All right. That happens because as long as there's a crowdfunding platform, a way for people to raise money, this will always exist. It is very important for investors who are going into it as an investor, especially to do due diligence. If you're a player, the game doesn't launch, it doesn't matter, right? But if the problem exists or you think there's a problem, rug pulls because you're investing. And when you invest, you must be able to take risks because as a startup entrepreneur, 70% of startups will fail. 20% of them will break even and not succeed. Only 10% or one will succeed. And because of volatility in crypto, 97% of them will fail in 2 years. So the point you must understand is rather than look at it as a rug pull, if you're an investor, you have to go in knowing that most of your investment will lose money. If you go in as an investor and assume you make money every time, you're not an investor, you're a gambler. Right? You're a gambler who doesn't understand investment. So that's something I want to highlight. Okay, that's important. Number two is about Indonesian the regulations are often changing. I actually don't agree on this because I think for the longest time it was regulated under a commodities law and only changing under a securities law next year. And in fact, I think that was very forward thinking of the regulators in Indonesia to give a framework for crypto to exist. The only other country in Southeast Asia that is either on par or better than Indonesia to me is Singapore and maybe Thailand because there is clear laws. As long as you stick within the law, you can do whatever you want. And that's actually very good for businesses compared to many other markets where the law is ambiguous, it's not clear. So actually, I don't think that it was changing all the time. I think that they took a while to figure out which law to put it under. And they were to make changes for the better, I would say. And I don't think that there's much stifling of innovation in Indonesia. So for me, as an outsider, no bias, I'm not part of your government or anything. I don't know anyone in government in Indonesia. I think it's actually not bad. It's pretty good. So that's one thing, right? And how would GameFi work with regulators to build transparent token standards? This is the special question. And my answer to you is GameFi is always ready to work with regulators. Regulators are usually not ready to work with GameFi. What I mean is that for me, coming from Malaysia, I've been an OG in the space in Malaysia a long time. I have never once been invited, even though I tried to invite myself, to a government roundtable to discuss policy because they were not interested to speak with me, even though I've been doing this longer than many people that are invited to the roundtable, right? So it's not a question of GameFi wanting to work with regulator. The practical thing is regulators may not want to work with you. So that is the problem because there's a lot of ways to mitigate risk. There's a lot of ways to put measures to do that. There's even ways to introduce insurance. You know, there's been so many mechanisms that can be implemented, but the issue is not GameFi is not ready, but usually regulators are not ready to talk. But when those countries where regulators are ready to talk, that's where they are making progress. Singapore is one of them. I can say I moved here. Regulators have been very forward. I've spoken to regulators. They've asked my opinion many times. You see changes happen because they take input from the industry. So it really does depend by countries. The regulators who are open and willing to listen will definitely do better because the solutions exist. There's a lot of solutions that already exist, right? So, and I think, so people like to blame GameFi. This is GameFi's fault. That's why Global doesn't want to appeal to it. The labels are wrong. I hate to call GameFi GameFi. I usually don't call it GameFi. When people ask me to talk about GameFi, I say it because to me, GameFi is not new. It has existed in games since World of Warcraft. The only difference is that companies don't enable transactions of gold in real life peer-to-peer. So they created a black market for it. It already exists. The consumers have been doing it before the companies have been doing it. That is all. Now companies are playing catch up with introducing GameFi solutions. But it's not new. It's not a dirty word, but it has become because people associate bad news more than good news, right? People remember the bad news more than good news. So yeah, I hope I've answered everything. It's a lot of questions, which I appreciate. And maybe I should stop here and pass it back to Andre for closing. Thank you so much, guys, for all the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, George. So you answer a lot of question with extensive elaboration, so we understand better, give new perspective or grow our perspective about this industry. I think you guys, the student, I want to highlight some of the important aspect of George's lecture. These 2 hours, which I think I don't really feel like 2 hours is so it's so packed with many information, so it feels like only half an hour. So you talk about the logic of metaverse business, so this is important for us. You say that content first and then reward to creator, and then the logic about how the big investment entity like SoftBank go into metaverse. Also, we just knew about the alpha phase in Web3, which is very enlightening information. Also, brand attention for the motivations, the brand existed and intellectual property in the metaverse, play to earn logic, and also the last part is which is also important for us is governance by community, Sandbox DAO. So I think we can also grow this idea in game community in Indonesia. So the last part, which is also important, is AI will enhance many thing development. Development, I really agree because last week I give a lecture to the student about data analytics, and we don't use Python. We just use ChatGPT, and they don't know about anything about coding, but they get the coding and they can do it by themselves. So I think it's similar to in blockchain space, and also immersion and realism. So I think that is all very interesting and very important for us. Thank you. I hope you can come offline to our
Yeah,
campus sometimes. Yeah, we can invite you to come to our campus, and maybe you can talk to much larger audience in the campus, technical and business student. Okay, I think this is I will close this morning class. Thank you very much, George. See you around, and thank you. Okay, so
thank you. Hope to see you on
okay,
Monday. Take care, guys.
yes, ya take care. Oke,
Have a good weekend. Bye bye.
thank you. Ya, selamat weekend semuanya ya. Saya tutup. Yuk, mari.